Hi friends, welcome to this latest episode of the Nationalist View. And in India and the World segment, today we'll discuss a number of things that have happened over the last 1 week. We have with us our special guest, NC Bipindraji. Bipindraji, thank you so much for joining us. And Bipindraji is a veteran commentator. He is a strategic affairs analyst. He's worked with leading international media agencies and national news platforms, also at very senior editorial positions. Is also founder and director of a New Delhi-based think tank Law and Society Alliance, which works extensively on geopolitics. So thank you very much, Bipindraji, once again. And first, I want to talk about the SCO Summit, which took place in Pakistan. So it was kind of very keenly watched because, as you had mentioned in the last episode, also that after Sushma Swaraj, it was the first visit of an Indian foreign minister there. So, what are the key takeaways from this SCO summit which happened in Islamabad?
Well, the key takeaway I would say is India's indirect bashing of China and Pakistan in External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar's speech. So I thought that was the biggest takeaway because there were 8 outcome documents that were signed at the summit. So essentially, there were also positive outcomes in the sense that India's perspective on development and security and all kind of found a mention in those documents. And apart from that, External Affairs Minister's speech itself. But I've written a piece for one of the think tanks in Delhi where I mentioned about this casual morning walk that Dr. Jaishankar took inside the Indian High Commission campus in Islamabad. So joined by the other diplomats of the High Commission, and he casually walks around chit-chatting with the diplomats, Indian diplomats, and also staffers out there in the thing. I thought the messaging by India was that it can walk the talk on all the developmental projects that it wishes to work on with the SCO members. If you look at the SCO membership, there are about 10 members at this point in time, and Belarus was the latest to join in the recent summit. So they were admitted in the previous summit, but they attended as a full member in this summit. So out of the 10 members, including Belarus, most of them are, Central Asian or East Asian, East and East European nations. If you consider Belarus also as an East European nation, then the Central Asian nations are the most important in the SCO grouping in terms of the numbers. So apart from that, you have Russia, China, India, Pakistan, and all as members there. So it was Pakistan's chairmanship. However, what I found interesting in the External Affairs Minister's speech essentially was that he targeted without naming Pakistan, for spreading terrorism, extremism, and separatism, globally. So, Pakistan is the epicenter of terrorism, which is a recognized fact. Even, global institutions like the UN have targeted Pakistani citizens and named them as global terrorists. So, it is essentially a epicenter of terrorism, as India likes to call it. So, we talked about how, the charter of the SCO, charter number 1 of the SCO, talks about mutual cooperation, mutual respect, sovereignty, and respecting the territorial integrity of members and all that. So it was one of the messaging that External Affairs Minister provided in that particular SCO meet, where he spoke on behalf of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And also he mentioned about, how, in fact, when he talked about China, he didn't refer to China specifically, but the indication was very clear that China is actually supporting terrorism, extremism, and separatism, which was the most important theme of Jaishankar's speech, as it is supporting Pakistan at this point in time, and also scuttling all moves by global institutions like the UN Security Council from naming and shaming Pakistan-based terrorists who have been given a haven by Pakistan government, which also follows this policy of terrorism as a state policy when it comes to Kashmir and Punjab. So these I thought were the biggest outcomes. But also positively, if you look at constructive things, I think India's reference to this G20 summit theme of one world, one people, one future, theme that he stressed upon. That came out pretty well in the form of what he mentioned about the SCO Startup Forum and the special working group on startups, innovation, and traditional medicines that India has been pushing for. And also, one more important outcome from it is India's offering of public digital public infrastructure as a giveaway to all the members, because India has been very successful in creating this digital infrastructure and also digital inclusion of common man through all the UPIs and different digital payments and other inclusive schemes that we have introduced. So that is a very important takeaway from it. India is offering itself, as a nation that is willing to help digital inclusion of people in the SCO nations. Particularly, Central Asia is our major focus, even in SCO for that matter. Of course, Russia is a long-term strategic partner. So India has been pursuing this Connect Central Asia policy for a very long time. And we are also interested in resources like minerals, including uranium from Kazakhstan, in Central Asia. And also one more interesting aspect is the SCO also has a very robust regional antitrust structure, anti-terrorist structure, where information and intelligence sharing on terrorism and drug running happens in that particular SCO structure, anti-terrorism structure. So I think India should be pushing for these kind of issues, and also probably at this point only Russian and Mandarin are official languages. Probably one of the Indian languages, preferably Hindi, should become the official language at SCO, because Pakistanis also know Hindi, or at least a form of Hindi in Urdu. So I believe that is one of the futuristic agendas that India can pursue. So also this mission life, policy of the Indian government, to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. That is also one of the SCO objectives that India should push. I think this is precisely the outcome from the SCO summit that happened in Islamabad on October 15th and 16th.
So let me share this thing with our viewers that Bipindraji's recent article about which he was referring, it has been published on the website of Center for Integrated and Holistic Studies, CIHS.org, I think is the website URL. So you can go there and we will also share the link of this article in our description box. So those who want to read, they can click on that link and they can read that article. And now this brings us to another story which is unfolding. And unfolding, it's like like a typical Bollywood story which is unfolding. It's the India-Canada diplomatic spat which is happening. So I just want to give a brief to our viewers that this spat happened over the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar last year. Hardeep Singh Nijjar was a Khalistani terrorist. He was one of the most wanted terrorists in India. India had been trying to extradite him, and he was running the Khalistan movement from Canada, and he had visited Pakistan several times, and there was credible evidence that he was involved in the Khalistan activities. So he was killed. Apparently, he was killed in a gang war there, and not due to some personal enmity, but Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. So he did this last year, and again he said that there is credible evidence that Indian agencies are involved. And after that, and they said that they would like to interrogate the Indian diplomats. So the Indian government has recalled the High Commissioner and several diplomats from there, and it has also expelled six Canadian diplomats in retaliation. Canada has also expelled about half a dozen Indian diplomats. So this diplomatic spat is going on, and but what we are going to discuss today is everybody is talking about India and Indian agencies, and though there's no credible evidence because now Trudeau's own party members are demanding his resignation. It's apparently because of the domestic politics which is happening there, because there are about 1.5 million Sikh voters there, 1.5 million Indian diaspora there, and out of that, a large number of them are Sikh voters. So, but there is an interesting angle that the Chinese and the ISI presence, Pakistan intelligence agencies. So, I would like you, Bipindra ji, to talk about it. That how this thing basically the Chinese presence there and the Pakistan's presence there. So, I think it's high time that we discuss this. So, if you can throw some light on that.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's a very important subject that you have touched upon, and it's important that we talk about this openly, at this point in time. So while Jastinder Singh Khalistani, sorry, Justin Trudeau has been, hammering India inside the Canadian Parliament and also outside through press conferences and other things, and also using their agencies like the RCMP, which is the Royal Canadian Police Department, and also their intelligence agency, which is called as CSIS, CSIS. So he's using these agencies for a political agenda, clearly, by targeting India. But what he is not talking about is the Chinese and the Pakistani, agencies' involvement in influencing Canadian politics and also Canadian social life. There have been a lot of reports, including CSIS's own reports, which mentioned about, China's is bigger. Let's talk China first, and then we'll talk Pakistan a little later. So in the case of China, there have been reports from CSIS on foreign interference in Canadian politics in a large number. For example, in the 2019 Canadian elections, general elections, there were reports by CSIS prior to the election saying that at least one of the candidates belonging to the Liberal Party of Justin Trudeau, sorry, I'm now used to this Justin name. So Justin Trudeau's party, Liberal Party, of funding his political campaign and its election work. Not only him, that particular candidate, I don't know whether it is him or her, but several candidates from the Liberal Party and a few candidates from the Conservative Party, which is currently the opposition party led by Pierre Poilievre, have been selectively funded just to ensure that there is a political influence on the Canadian government for the Chinese Communist Party. So essentially, the influence operations of the Chinese is essentially to ensure that in a host country, there are no, in a foreign country which they are targeting for the influence, there are no government policies that are, against Chinese interests. So it's essentially warfare that they are doing. It's called a psychological propaganda warfare. This is also influence warfare, essentially. So they have tried it, and they have been funding Justin Trudeau's party and a lot of candidates. In fact, I was watching one of the videos of the parliament discussion where the opposition leader, Pierre Poilievre, questions Justin Trudeau on the 2018-2019 CSIS report on the elections that happened at that time. And he got re-elected. Justin Trudeau got re-elected in 2019. So he asks him very specifically. This is a very important question that he asks, and let us observe what he asks. He says that, is there a member of your caucus or your cabinet who has received funds from China during his election campaign? Very specific. Okay, probably Pierre Poilievre knows the name of this man who's in the cabinet, man or him or her in the cabinet of Justin Trudeau, him, her, it, they, them, whatever, they want, pronoun that they want to use. So there is somebody in the Justin Trudeau cabinet who has a Chinese connection, who's a Chinese stooge. Let us be very clear about it. So China is probably influencing the attack on India because there have been a commission, parliamentary, I don't know exactly what is the term that they're using, I'm not able to recall it, but there is an investigation that is going on by a commission into the influence operation that were happening in Canada by various countries. And China is an important, nation of foreign interference that is being investigated. So probably this is an effort to divert the attention away from China. Probably that is why Justin Trudeau is talking about this particular case since last August, September. And also probably because you have already mentioned about this Ripudaman Malik's murder and the retaliation murder of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. And there are at least two people who say it is actually Canadian nationals who say that, very important people who say that probably it is gang rivalry that led to these killings. One is a senior journalist from Canada called as Terry Milowski. He has written at least 2 books on the Khalistani thing, and he has investigated the 1985, Kanishka, Air India flight bombing, in which more than 320 people, including Canadians and Indians, were killed without any mercy, and it was a Khalistani terror strike. Sikh, I won't call it a Sikh, it's essentially a Khalistani terror strike that happened. So he mentions in this book about this conspiracy that has happened, and also, he has spoken on various public platforms of the inter-gang rivalry, that is happening between the killings that have happened, due to which these killings have happened. And also there is a Jody Thomas, who is a former national security advisor, previously was a national security advisor. He also says very clearly that all evidences show that it's a inter-gang rivalry killing. So probably a lot of people have covered this aspect of Sikh vote bank that Justin Trudeau is trying to attract to himself during the coming elections, because the NDP of Jagmeet Singh they have already withdrawn their support to this government. So the Sikh party, the party which represents mostly the Sikh community in Canada, have withdrawn. So this is the political struggle that a lot of people have talked about, this political vote bank politics that Justin Trudeau is involved in. So, but the other aspect is the Chinese aspect. Why we say China is important player in this influence operation is because not only Justin Trudeau, even including his father, Pierre Trudeau, were stooges of China. The Trudeau Foundation, Pierre Trudeau Foundation, was heavily funded by the Chinese, and the funding happened through several Chinese origin Canadian nationals who are doing business, and through them these funding was happening. So there is a lot of China involvement in Canada right now, and we have also heard about these 5 or 6 Chinese police stations which are operating to threaten and coerce Chinese nationals who are dissidents, essentially, of communist China. So there is a lot of Chinese activity that is going on in Canada, and probably this is one of the Chinese influence operations on Justin Trudeau himself to divert this attention, probably. That is one thing. On Pakistan is also a major influence operations player in Canada, and they have a lot of Pakistani nationals living in Canada, just Pakistani origin Canadians there. And of course, Canada has this habit of, welcoming all terrorists and criminal gangs, to its territory, and giving them citizens, even if they've applied, 3 times with the fake documents, like what Hardeep Nijjar did. And also they fast track those citizenships. That is the most interesting part. It's like the CAA of Canadian, citizenship policy, or whatever you call it. So that it is the CAA of Canada to award citizenship to all terrorists and criminal gangs over there.
The only difference is that they this exception for, like in CA, this is for the common people who are really suffering, but Here, these are the criminals basically, and pretty. And I think the more hardened criminal or a terrorist you are,
The
you
more faster you
yeah,
get the citizenship.
faster you get the no
Yeah.
citizenship
The
of.
CAA difference is essentially in the India's case, we are giving it to religious minorities who have been persecuted and who have fled the neighboring countries of Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh. So essentially, the difference is that here, if the long arm of the law catching up with you in India, then run to Canada to gain citizenship because you are a hardened criminal and terrorist. So that is the difference between the two. So okay, that apart, Pakistan, there was a Baluch dissident who fled Pakistan because she was being persecuted and landed in Canada. I don't know if she had taken the citizenship. Her name is what is her name? I'm forgetting her name. Karima Baluch. Yeah, Karima Baluch is her name. Karima Baluch was killed sometime last year in Canada by Pakistani elements. Pakistani agents, rogue agents. They are not rogue. They are actually agents of the state, Pakistani state. Why is Trudeau not expelling any, Pakistani High Commission officials? Why is he not talking about it? So is that not a threat to to Canada and Canadian citizens? These attacks that have happened on Karima Baluch. So I mean, these are all questions that need to be asked
And
to
especially this
Justin
whole
Trudeau.
Khalistan project is
Yeah,
basically
in fact, Terry Milos's book or article that he wrote for, what is that, McDonald Laurier Institute, I think. Uh, I'm forgetting the name of that institution. So he wrote a huge article for this think tank. And in that he says that Khalistan is a anti-India project of Pakistan. He's giving evidence after evidence to show that it is Pakistan which is actually funding and encouraging these Khalistani elements, and also Khalistani terrorism and Khalistani criminal actions within Canada. He is proving it very clearly. So there are evidences to show this. So Pakistan is a major player in even the Khalistani terrorism. So both Pakistan's own influence operations and criminal activity in Canada, threatening Canadian citizens and of their security, and also their funding and encouragement and their project, anti-India project of Khalistan in Canada. So these are some of the aspects which Justin Trudeau is not. I'm sorry, Justin Trudeau is not talking about. Now it's become a habit for me to call him as Justin.
no, it will soon become a habit of no lot of people. So and what he is doing is truly basically justifying his new name. So
Essentially, he's proving himself to be a Khalistani terrorist.
yeah.
Probably India, I mean, since you raised this issue, let me tell you, I think India should declare him as a Khalistani terrorist. And you should file cases against him for, for supporting and giving shelter to all the Khalistan. Is that not a crime under the Indian Penal Code? Even the latest version, if you give, provide refuge to a criminal, then you are a criminal. You will be treated as though you have committed the crime. So I think India should file a case against him and extradite him to India. Seek an extradition of Justin Trudeau to India and put him on trial. That is an extreme stand, but I think
No,
the
I
time has
don't.
come to do
I
that.
think the way he's behaving, he's abetting basically terrorism, and he's aiding terrorism against India and all the known terror elements. He has gone to the extent of making the Canadian Parliament observe 2 minute silence for killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar this year, basically.
Yeah.
So I think that.
Probably somebody should file a complaint and register an FIR in Delhi, in one of the police stations in Delhi against Justin Trudeau for abetting terrorism and criminal activity.
So I think
And probably, file go to the court and also file a case against him and get a decree against him.
So I think, after listening to this broadcast, I'm sure, somebody will get inspired and do this thing. Now, coming to the last segment of the program, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is planning to visit Kazan in Russia, where the BRICS summit is going to be held on 22nd and 23rd October. So now this BRICS summit, of course, he's going there on the invitation of Vladimir Putin, Russian president, and he'll meet him there also. So, but all eyes are on whether PM Modi will meet Xi Jinping, because the Indian Ministry of External Affairs has said that there will be bilateral meetings between the heads of the states there. So, and India is going to have these bilateral meetings. So, but there is a lot of speculation which is going on whether on the sidelines of this BRICS summit, India and China, whether Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping will meet. So overall, how do you look at this BRICS summit, especially because right now the Russia-Ukraine war is going on, and the West has been trying to corner Russia uh, ever since this war has started. So how do you look at it?
In fact, BRICS is a very important, informal multilateral institution that India is involved in a greater manner. India was one of the 4 founding members of BRICS. Earlier it was called BRIC: Brazil, Russia, India, and China. And essentially, if you look at how it came about as an alternative to the G7, which is the formal institution created by the Western developed economies, led by the US and other nations like UK, France, Germany. All of them are there in that G7. So this BRIC essentially came about as an alternative to that system because they were excluded from joining. I think External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has also talked about this G7 having excluded several of these nations, developing nations, because of which they had to perforce create a institution of the sort of the BRICS sort. Now, from 4, they added South Africa and it became BRICS. And now they have added another 5 more to become 10 nations. And all of these nations are very important. One of the most important, thing about BRICS is that, I think Prime Minister Narendra Modi mentioned, it is not an anti-West formation, but it is a non-West formation, non-Western nations formation, which I think the nuances in the 2 statement, description of what BRICS is very clear. And I think Putin has also endorsed this kind of a description of what BRICS stands for, Modi's description of it. And interestingly, Putin also mentions that it is not a, the Cold War style bloc, non-US bloc. He mentioned that very specifically in his media interaction that happened, I think yesterday or the day before yesterday. There was a media interaction where he uses this term non-bloc formation. So that is very clear. The biggest trouble that most of these nations in BRICS, the 10 nations in BRICS have, is this Ukraine war that is going on. Widely, there has been condemnation of this Ukraine war. A lot of nations who are also part of the BRICS, the nations have also condemned this, and it's a what do you call it, as a sticking point as far as the BRICS summit is concerned. But only thing is there are also several big nations which have not condemned Russia for the Ukraine war, including India, China. These nations are not condemned, essentially. So BRICS is very important in the sense that India has always had a strategic autonomy as its principle in diplomacy. And for that reason, India engages with all sides, be it the US-led Western nations or the Russia, China-led non-Western nations. So it is very important also because there are certain issues that are interesting. First and foremost is this de-dollarization aspect, which is essentially these nations who are part of the BRICS don't want the US dollar to be the dominant trading currency globally, global trading currency. So essentially, they're trying to create a alternative currency for global trade, or at least trade within the BRICS, nations. And either you trade, through the currency of the exporting nation. Like for example, India, if it exports to Russia, they can either do it in ruble or Indian rupee. Similarly, similar arrangement with other nations. I'm just giving it as an example. So that is one of the formulas that has been discussed. The other formula is that we'll make the Chinese currency as the trading currency for all the BRICS, which India is not agreeable to it. And also a couple of other nations are not agreeable to that idea. Why US dollar or a single currency of a single nation should not be is because then you are subjected to economic sanctions, which hinder your export global trade. So people don't want to get into that, get caught in that web of global sanctions by the dominant currency, global trade currency. So that is the reason this is very important. That discussion is continuing. No final decision has been taken, and there are a lot of another interesting aspect of BRICS is that it comprises of 10 nations which globally have about 25% of the global trade, and also 50% of the world population belongs to these 10 BRIC nations. So it's a huge, it's a powerful.
So it's like you're representing half the world.
You are representing half the world. And also one of the most important aspects of BRICS is that they are asking for reforms of global institutions to make it much more fairer to the global south, essentially. The basic premise is that the global institutions at this point, including the United Nations and the United Nations Security Council, or the World Bank, financial institutions like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, are too cozy with the Western nations. They take the diktats of the US and the Western
Basically,
nations.
they're tools. The whole management structure is basically like this, because I remember, Joseph Stiglitz, who was, I think, heading either IMF or World Bank. So he has written a very wonderful book called Globalization and Its Discontent. So Stiglitz is a Nobel laureate, and before joining World Bank, I think it was with World Bank. So one of these, you can say, Bretton Woods institution. He was a very hardcore proponent of globalization. But he writes in his book that when he went and when he joined there, and initially he saw that how this bunch of capitalist market driven economies, developed economies, so they are squeezing the rest of the economies and they are exploiting them. So, and he was sacked from there. He did not resign, he was fired from there. So, and then he came out with this book. So I would suggest our, viewers that, yeah, if they can, get hold of this book. It's a wonderful book. And the story that how this book came up exposes this so-called multilateral international institutions. So please.
It's quite an interesting subject to study. So the other important aspect of BRICS is the South-South cooperation that it is fostering. So India and China are currently competing to gain the leadership role in the global South. So they want to become the leaders of the global South. China calls itself as a global South. I don't know on what parameters, by the way, but because it is the second largest economy in the world, and now they want to represent the global South. Okay, anyway, that is a debatable issue. But the point is, this is a very important forum for this global South cooperation. So also there is a lot of economic coordination that happens among these nations. In fact, I think from 2001 to 2021, this 20-year period, the FDI among these BRICS nations has quadrupled. It's grown 4 times between 2001 and 2021. So economically also, it's a very important. And BRICS is a major market, as I mentioned, half the world's population live in this area. So for all these reasons, BRICS is very important. Moreover, the summit itself is important because of all the bilaterals that you talked about. I don't know if Prime Minister Modi will be meeting with the Chinese President Xi Jinping in the bilaterals, but that is not known. Maybe it won't happen because of the current Ladakh military conflict situation. But with all others, he is likely to do this bilaterals, and probably he's meeting Putin for the second time since he last visited, I think in June of this year. I think he visited last, and what communication has to be communicated on the Ukraine war, India has always communicated. So I think Putin has also said that he appreciates India's stand and opinion on this matter. So that way, this is going to be a very important, global event. I would call it a global event. Everybody is watching it because of what is the messaging that is going to come out. Of course, Russia is trying to, and China probably are trying to, put up a anti-US approach to the entire BRICS format, but probably Brazil and India and South Africa may not agree to it because we are more and more engaged with the US, for various strategic issues. So I think that that may not happen, and the anti-West thing may not happen. But essentially, the signaling on de-dollarization, the signaling on the development projects that they want to work on, the signaling on the alternative global financial institutions that they want, like they have a development bank of their own, new development bank, I think it's called as. So that is also going to be very important. And there is also a contingent reserve agreement, which is very similar to the IMF arrangement for funding of developmental activities and stuff like that. So how that is going to pan out is what we need to watch out for. And it's a very important event, globally speaking.
So thank you so much, Bipindra ji. This is the kind of wrap up which we have done for the last week in terms of developments on the world stage and which are connected with India. So we'll be back soon with another topic, and we'll discuss that. And if you've liked the video, please share it, subscribe to our channel, and like the video also. And if you'll press the bell icon, you'll get the notifications for all the latest videos. And Bipindra ji, thank you so much for taking out time and speaking extensively on all these issues. And hopefully we'll be back with you very soon. And thank you so much. Namaskar.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.